Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, finally, the weekend's here, ladies and gentlemen. We got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about a story right off the bat that just kind of warms my heart. It makes me think there may be a silver lining to all of this craziness, this pandemic, the coronavirus, and that starts out in California. 1,200 pastors to defy California's stay-at-home order. We'll expand on that. And then there's an opinion piece written in Politico by the founding editor of Politico, and he says that the Democrats are being caught in a Trump trap, and we'll explain what that means. And then, of course, everybody's telling you got to believe in science. You got to do what the CDC says, the World Health Organization. We got to believe in science. And I'm not disputing that whatsoever. But what if the science proves to be RDBS, as I like to call it, ridiculous, and you fill in the blank there, man. And we'll tell you exactly what we're talking about there. But we start with California. Attorney, 1,200 California pastors agree to reopen May 31st in defiance of stay-at-home order, and this is from CBS Channel 5 in San Francisco. More than 1,200 California pastors say they will resume in-person services on May 31st in defiance of Governor Gavin Newsom's stay-at-home order to slow the spread of the coronavirus. And before I get into this next part of it, do you really realize that the CDC, there's been no actual legislation passed either at the national or state level? The CDC are recommendations. And with that, these governors, these little Napoleons all over the country, have taken it to heart and shut us down based on no legislation that was passed whatsoever, based on no declaration of martial law, based on nothing as far as I can see that is constitutional. We'll expand on that in just a moment. But I thought I would start by reading basically what the First Amendment means. And because I think this is at the heart of what is happening in our nation right now. It centers around the First Amendment. And of course, the Second Amendment is here to protect us in case people do what? Try to take away our First Amendment rights. But let's read a little bit about this. And as I'm reading it, think a minute and see if this is not exactly what is being taken from us literally as we speak. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution prevents the government from making laws which regulate an establishment of religion, prohibit the free exercise of religion, or abridge the freedom of speech. I mean, they're basically, isn't that what's happening right now? The right to peacefully assemble, or the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Right now, we're not allowed to assemble in anything more than what the government defines that to be. And if we have our grievances, we're called everything but a child of God for doing it. Reckless and trying to kill people. As I told you the other day, one of our city commissioners here in Gainesville locally said that the state of Florida and the federal government, she was talking about Ron DeSantis, probably the greatest governor in the country right now, maybe president one day, and President Bush, because she said the state and federal government are actively trying to kill people, and no one called her out except me, of course. But the First Amendment was adopted on December 15th, 1791, as one of the 10 amendments that constitute what we affectionately call the Bill of Rights. Now, I've played you this video before, and I know we're talking about California, but this video needs to be played over and over and over again, because I think it speaks for these little Napoleon governors all over this great United States of America. And this was a few weeks ago when the governor of New Jersey, Governor Murphy, was on Tucker Carlson's show. And you might want to watch the whole video. It's about 10 or 15 minutes long. We're only going to play a short clip where Tucker Carlson asked him what gave this governor the right to do away with the Bill of Rights. And his answer and his cavalier attitude about it is just painful, and I should say shocking, but at this point, not much shocks me when it comes from progressive liberals. Check it out.
So you made that decision, and as I noted before, 15 congregants at a synagogue in New Jersey were arrested and charged for being in a synagogue together. Now, the Bill of Rights, as you well know, protects Americans' right, enshrines their right to practice their religion as they see fit and to congregate together, to assemble peacefully. By what authority did you nullify the Bill of Rights in issuing this order? How do you have the power to do that?
That's above my pay grade, Tucker. So I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this. We went to all.
That's
first
good,
of all, we looked
right
at
there.
the data.
I mean, think about what he just said so cavalier. He kind of chuckles. Oh, we weren't thinking about the Bill of Rights. No joke. Well, perhaps you should be thinking about the Bill of Rights. If you're going to assume a leadership, you swore oath as governor of New Jersey to defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. You swear that oath. I swore the same oath when I became mayor of my little hometown in Hawthorne, Florida. I took it serious. I'm not so sure that Mr. Murphy did because he chuckled about it. But at the very heart of the U.S. Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And the first one, and I'm not sure they put them in order of importance, but it's darn sure pretty important. And I would think that the Second Amendment, as I said earlier, basically defends your right to the rest of the amendments before and after the second, because I haven't said this much in a while, but people seem to totally misunderstand our Bill of Rights. And maybe it's because, just like that governor, here's the guy who's the supreme elected official in one of our states, and he doesn't have a clue. And one of the most misunderstood is the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment, we won't get too deep into it, but let me just tell you, lean into this, snowflakes, because I know this will melt some of y'all. The Second Amendment has zippo to do with hunting. It's not about your musket to kill a squirrel or a bear. You can use it for that, but it is specifically to defend yourself from the tyranny of a government or individuals that would take away your inalienable, in other words, God-given right. It is to kill people if you need to defend yourself and your rights and your family. That's what the Second Amendment is. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. We don't say it enough. We try to defend it in all kind of different ways, but that's what it's about. I, for one, am not backing down on that. I'm not backing down on free speech, the right of public assembly. I'm not necessarily saying that we didn't need to take some of the steps, although some of them are a bit much right now, and people are getting tired of it. We got a story towards the end of the show that'll just really make you just kind of question everything. But my problem is they took these rights, just like that governor said, without even giving it a thought. And maybe what's even worse is many of us gave them away without even any discussion whatsoever. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has got to stop. Newsom, back to California story here. Billy Bob tells me get back to the story. If you hadn't met my psychic sidekick, he's Billy Bob Bass. He kind of keeps me straight here. He's got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. So check this out. I did a little tweeting today, as a matter of fact. Newsom has gradually allowed some businesses to reopen as the state's number of virus-related hospitalizations has flattened. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the message coming out of the mainstream media and the progressive leftists is different than what was used to shut us down. Because if you remember, the theory behind shutting us down was just what it said here, to flatten the curve so that our hospitals wouldn't get overwhelmed. And thank God they haven't been, both by the virus treatment and, of course, the reaction of President Donald Trump building hospitals all over the place and Navy ships and everything else. But now that narrative is till we're like free of the virus, till we get a vaccine, which could be forever. So this idea of flattening the curve, we were basically, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is no shock to you, our politicians sold us a bill of goods and sold us out when it comes to the Bill of Rights. But it said, but churches are still banned, and they are in many, many places, along with hair salons and sporting events. I don't know if you've been following that guy that runs a gym up in New Jersey, but he got dragged out of his gym yesterday and arrested, man. I mean, so at the same time, this is a side note, and this was in New Jersey, getting back to New Jersey, at the very same time, they let like 5 sex offenders out of jail because they were worried about the coronavirus. And of course, old Michael Cohen, he got out. I don't know if you saw that or not. But at the same time they were letting out these sex offenders, they were imprisoning a guy who had a mask on, was cleaning his stuff, trying to run his own business, not breaking any actual laws, because these shutdown things are not laws. They are not been passed legislatively. And he got put in jail while they're letting the sex offenders out. I don't know about you. It kind of pisses me off. But Newsom said Monday churches could reopen in weeks, not months. Now, keep in mind that Garcetti, the mayor of L.A., said basically L.A. may be shut down till this time next year. So, who knows? I don't trust any of them, to be honest with you. But many churches are tired of waiting. Wednesday, a lawyer representing a church in Lodi, that's in California, that has sued Newsom, said more than 1,200 pastors have signed a declaration of essentiality. I guess they're saying they're essential, which if you've been listening to my show, you'll know I hate that word. First of all, if you hadn't been, where you been? Glad to have you. You're at the right place now, because you won't get political correctness, but you will get unvarnished truth, man. You scrub away all that old nasty stuff, get to the hardwood truth here at JMT. I can tell you that. But I hate that term essential, because every job is essential. Just like that beautician in Texas where she said, I'm not going to apologize and I'm not selfish for trying to feed my kids. And she's not. Who would have thought that hair salon owners, barbershops, and guys that run gyms are the new heroes? You talk about a new normal, which I hate that term too, but maybe our new normal is American people are going to stand up again. That's what I'm hoping. But it says Declaration of Essential that announces their plan to reopen these churches on May 31st while observing physical distance and precaution. Now, you may say hooray for these pastors, and I do as well, but this is nothing new for our country, actually. A lot of people, we have forgotten our history. It's not taught anymore. Maybe another thing with homeschooling, maybe our kids will actually get taught real American history, because it is something to be proud of. Do we have some warts? Absolutely. But I'll put what we've accomplished in this country against anything that we know of in history. But pastors have a history going back to the revolution of standing up. There was, and being defiance in defiance for our great country. The first thing you may not have heard of this, but there was a group called the Black Robe Regiment, and it was pastors that were organized their churches against King George and were kind of clandestine guerrilla fighters, and they called themselves the Black Robe Regiment. I think we got a little bit of a picture or meme on that, but they wore their priestly or their pastorally robes, and they were in black. Another one, now this is a few years later, but man, do we need people like this next gentleman. Have you heard of a guy named Charles Grandison Finney? Charles Finney. Check this guy out, man. He was born August 29, 1792, and lived to August 16, 1875. He was an American Presbyterian minister and leader in the Second Great Awakening, they called it, in the United States. He has been called the father of modern revivalism. Finney was best known as an innovative revivalist during the period of 1825 to 1835 in upstate New York. Look at what he said there, talking about when Satan gets involved in things, that the church is to blame. He actually said the church is to blame for letting it happen. And I know that's harsh words to some people, but really, isn't that true? Isn't it true that for the sake of go along, get along, that we people who have faith in our nation have kind of let stuff slide, and the progressive just take more and more and more and more and more. And they will take even more if we let them. Look at what is happening in our country right now. These progressives are taking advantage of this pandemic and trying to pass legislation that wouldn't have the chance of seeing the light of day. But we better wake up. We better listen to Mr. Finney. Don't you think the state of New York, for God's sakes, they could use a Charles Finney right now? Attorney Robert Tyler, this is the attorney for the pastors in California. He represents multiple churches. He expects as many as 3,000 churches across California could have in-person services on May 31st. Isn't that kind of what happens when one or two people stand up? A lot of people are willing to follow. Everybody wants to be a Indian chief, but only a few want to be a follower. But it takes a few chiefs, a few people brave enough to step forward. And here's the thing. You have to, I've been saying this for several weeks now. You have to, as an individual, assess your own risk. I'm not telling you to break out and go run to church and be in anything with a crowd of, hundreds and even thousands of people in some of these churches. I'm not advocating that necessarily. If you don't think it's safe for you or your family, then by all means you shouldn't do it. But if you believe that it's safe enough that you need that, it is essential to you, that's all that matters, because you have the God-given right under our Declaration of Independence, Constitution, our founding documents, for the pursuit of happiness. So if it's essential to your pursuit of happiness to get back to church, I don't think the government or any individual should be able to tell you can't go. And according to our Constitution, grants you or guarantees you, doesn't grant you, it guarantees you that God-given right to freedom of assembly and that you can't be regulated by the state. So everything they're doing right now is unconstitutional. I don't even care if a judge says it's constitutional. I'm here to tell you, plain and simple, it ain't. It just isn't, man. You can call me whatever you want out there, but it's not constitutional. We are living in a post-constitutional age, and if we don't wake up and rise up, it's going to be gone. And many people don't even have, this is what saddens me the most, is many people, especially younger people, have no clue what we've lost and what we're in danger of losing. And that's why it's up to the church. It's up to people like me. It's one of the reasons I do this show, Battling Ignorance and Apathy Daily, where, you can see me. If you're new to the show, you can see our podcast on John Martin Talks Facebook page. Like it, share it with others. We got a great YouTube channel up and running, updated every day. You can see all of our previous shows there. You can watch us on whatever Facebook channel you're watching now. Of course, America's Voice News is a network we partnered up with, and they're not only live on Facebook, good morning, how y'all doing, but they also put us across, you can download a free app, the Android, the iPhone, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Dish Network, Channel 219, and Pluto TV. So there are many ways to get this truth out there, and you need to share it with as many people as possible, because I guarantee you're not getting this type of truth and education in much of the mainstream media. That's for sure. But I love this part here, what the lawyer said, man. And I joke about lawyers all the time, but this guy seems to be a patriot, man. Listen to what he said about this letter. Let me take a little sip here. He said, this letter was not sent for the purposes of asking permission. Hallelujah, man. I mean, praise the Lord on that one. The lawyer said that this letter, let me quote him again, this letter was not sent for the purposes of asking for permission. It sounds like the Declaration of Independence, basically, right? To King George. I don't know if he signed it like John Hancock where they could see it, but there could be. This is the one thing. I've been a bit depressed about what's happening in our country, but every now and then a story pops up like this one, and it gives me hope that there may be a silver lining to all this pain and suffering, both from the virus and economically, because people might get really woke. Not the BS political correctness woke, but really woke. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to over-dramatize it, but I'm just going to say it. I truly believe the soul of our nation is on the line. I said it. I believe that. I really do. And I joke around a lot, but when it comes to the U.S. Constitution, it is deadly serious because a price has been paid for that. And you'll hear me all the time saying we got to man the political ramparts so we don't have to man the real ones again, because that price, ladies and gentlemen, has already been paid, and it would be a dadgum shame if we had to pay it again. But it's coming if we're not vigilant, I'm telling you. The letter comes one day after the head of the U.S. Justice Department Civil Rights Division told Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, in a letter that his stay-at-home order discriminates against churches and places an unfair burden on them. And, hallelujah, I'm hoping that's true. I played this video yesterday, but I think in this particular case, it bears playing again. This is Kayleigh McEnany, who is the new press secretary for President Trump. She's a fellow Floridian. I'm telling you, man, she is incredible. And she talks in this video, who she's been getting criticized for, of why Donald Trump won, and I would say why he hopefully will win again. But I want you to pay special attention to a couple of terms she used, especially the one about religious liberty, and we'll come back and discuss that. Check it out.
God has impacted your life, and here's Donald Trump as president of the United States, and just proving God has a sense of humor, that Donald Trump is president. Who would have thunk it? But here he is. How do you see God kind of in all of that? This idea of providence and this idea that a lot of folks, I asked Sarah in that seat a few years back, that, is Donald Trump put there by God for such a time as this, if you will? What's kind of your feeling on that?
Yeah, I think, look, prayer made a difference in this election, and that's not to say, I think God not to say that he puts a certain political party in a certain place at a time, but I do believe certain people are meant to be in positions at a certain moment, and I do believe that President Trump is the person meant for this moment, and I think prayer made a lot of difference in the election. I'll never forget Laura Trump. I asked her, I was interviewing people for my book, and I said, what made the difference in the election? Without missing a beat, she said prayer. Right? And I think that's right. I think, that this country needed someone to fight for life, to fight for religious liberty. And I believe that President Trump was that person, and he's done that with the judges he's put in place, with the Mexico City policy ensuring federal dollars don't go to abortion.
That's good enough. Did you hear what she said, religious liberty? That's a very important statement that rarely gets talked about. And people, the mainstream media, progressive left, they're always out to get President Trump. They don't understand you MAGA hat wearing sons of guns. They definitely don't understand how, quote, evangelicals could support Donald Trump because they say he's immoral and all that. I'm not going to get into all that debate. There are plenty of reasons not to think that Donald Trump is the most moral guy in the world if you want to hold him to that. You can use that as a reason not to vote for him. But let me tell you why evangelicals, and I'm painting with a broad brush, why they have no issue voting for Donald Trump. First of all, there's a book out there that tells you all of us fall short of the glory. You might ought to check it out. It's kind of old, but it refreshes itself every generation sometimes. But this term religious liberty explains why evangelicals, in my opinion, but it's an opinionated fact nonetheless, it's because Donald Trump doesn't try to tell them how to worship, he believes in the Constitution. He allows Christians, in this case, but other religions as well, to practice their religion freely without government tyranny from the IRS and from everything else. He allows evangelicals to be who they are. He doesn't try to tell them what they have to be, and he tries to get government out of their way, which is what the First Amendment is all about. It's not just not having a government religion. It's allowing you to practice your religion as long as you don't trample on somebody else's rights. So that term religious liberty is at the heart, I believe, of why evangelicals support President Trump no matter what. Back to this article, the Cross Cultural Christian Center in Lodi was one of a few churches that tried to keep meeting despite the stay-at-home order. So they stood up from the very beginning. Local police, check this out. Local police entered the church during a service in March to tell them they were violating the governor's order. The church's landlord later changed the locks, and the police threatened to cite anyone who entered the property. Think about that. So which is more frightening, the coronavirus or what I just read? If you're a constitutionalist, it's an easy answer, man. Give me corona anytime over this, because I may or may not survive corona, but I can tell you, if we allow, and I don't wish it on anybody, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not downplaying it all. It could be the death of us all, so I'm not downplaying it. But like my buddy Patrick Henry said, friend of the show, give me liberty or give me death. What he was talking about, if you read the further transcript of what he was saying, is he's talking about living, just existing on the planet is not enough. If he can't be a free man, a free, rugged individual, which is what this country was founded on, especially the state of California, for God's sakes. You've heard me go on a few rants. It breaks my heart to see what liberals have done to the greatest state in the nation at one point. They have turned it from the jewel to the stool. But it is more frightening to me to have the Constitution torn asunder than the coronavirus, because we can survive the coronavirus. Individually, we might not. But if we don't have the U.S. Constitution, then the coronavirus will be the least of our worries, man. But the church sued and a federal judge earlier this month sided with Newsom. No big surprise there. You know, as I say, just because a judge actually says it's constitutional, a lot of them don't even know how to spell that word anymore. We are post-constitutional. Lamont sided with Newsom, saying he had the right to ban church services in the interest of public health. Does this say that in the First Amendment anywhere? I don't see it. Please point it out to me. Chime in on Facebook, whatever you feel. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But if you could point to me, please, where in the Constitution it authorized them to ban you from going to church for your own health. I don't see it. I don't see it. But Tyler said the church has appealed the ruling. That's the attorney. Now, the problem, ladies and gentlemen, is we have forgotten our roots. We don't know, many of us, especially our young, which is a real shame, don't really even know what a constitutional republic is. You keep hearing these Democrats, oh, we're saving democracy. They want to impeach 45 to save the democracy. All kind of crap, man, that has nothing to do. First of all, we're not a democracy, and Benjamin Franklin said he gave us a republic if we could keep it, and it is in danger. So we have forgotten the greatness that made this country. And yes, I said it, America is exceptional, and it is great. If you don't believe me, and you want to talk about, we talked about a little bit about the virus yesterday and the Wuhan and the Chinese and all that. If you want to see some people that love America, I want to play a video for you, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time, this is not American citizens, but citizens of China in Hong Kong speaking up for their freedom, wearing masks for a far different reason than the virus that we're talking about. They're wearing a mask because of the virus of communism. But they know what time it is. Check it out.
Through the perilous fight.
希望大家揾個朋友出嚟，可以講一講。
Mrs. Beijing! Victory Hong Kong! Mrs. Beijing! Victory Hong Kong! Mrs. Beijing!
Mrs. Beijing! Victory Hong Kong! Mrs. Beijing! Victory Hong Kong!
People without freedom know what the value of freedom is. We've gotten kind of fat and happy in this country. So I am really, and I'm not begrudging that. I'm glad. I mean, heck, I join in that every day. I am so hopeful that we have a silver lining coming out of this. I applaud these pastors. We got new patriots. The new normal could be, and I'm praying and hoping for this. Yeah, I pray. I pray for your family. You pray for mine, like I say each and every day now. But I'm praying that people will pick up the baton, pick up the flag, raise it. I'm not saying, assess your own risk. You got to do that. But we cannot forget the greatness of America. Those guys in Hong Kong who are literally risking their life, not going to the supermarket, but in front of the communist Chinese, or they know what time it is. Do you? Anyway, let's move along. I get on these rants because I care. I care a great deal about this nation. All right, we're going to get to an article. It's an opinion piece by a guy named John F. Harris, and he's the founding, or I think he's the founding editor, whatever that means, of Politico. So let's read this article. He's written an interesting piece, and I agree with quite a bit of it, actually. He's saying that the Trump is laying a trap for the Democrats. Here's the title. Once again, Democrats are caught in the Trump trap. Former President Barack Obama, since leaving office, rarely wades into debates about his successor, too busy making millions on Netflix and hanging out with that Charles Branson guy next to Epstein's Island, by the way, down in the Caribbean, maybe. But I digress. I regret. Sometimes I do that. But President Donald Trump's performance during the pandemic compelled him, talking about Obama, to raise his voice. So right off the bat, he's implying something that just seems a little strange to me. So are we to believe that Obama was going to just sit this one out, that he was going to be content to hang out with Michelle and count their Netflix money and he wasn't going to enter into this race, considering that Trump has like been shredding his legacy. I mean, he did take a while to endorse Joe. He waited till he was the last man floating, last body floating out there to get on board. So he has been hesitant in that, but I never for once thought he wasn't going to jump right in the middle of this. Now, all this, quote, Obamagate, one of the good, I don't think Obama's going to jail. I don't think he's going to trial. Neither is Biden. I hate to say, talked a lot about this a couple of days ago, but I do think it might slow Obama down a little bit in trying to campaign. So that could be, but I don't, rats, the problem, if you hadn't tuned in before, let me just tell you, the reason I'm hopeful that heads will roll in some of these investigations, but my experience has been rats don't like to convict rats. And there's a lot of rats on both sides of the aisle. But talking about Obama, he was sharp by his standards, though hardly by Trump's, in a rapidly leaked conference call in which former employees in which the credited incumbent with an absolute chaotic disaster. So basically, they leaked this. Do you think that was probably on purpose? They leaked it that what Trump's doing is a chaotic disaster. And I'm saying, like, okay, compared to what? From what I see, our country is doing better than most, if not better than any of them. And so I don't know. And here's the thing that never gets talked about. We talk about how the economy is going down right now. Think about where we would be at this moment if we had not had the Trump rebound in the economy. If we had started this pandemic with the recession, basically depression that Obama left us with. The one reason we're able to get through this pandemic without more. Now, if it keeps going and the economy doesn't open, then all bets are off. But the reason why we've been able to coast a little bit here and have an extended vacation, basically, is we are living on the borrowed time of the Trump economy that he created. And if he created it once, just like he said, MAGA, make America great again, baby. And I don't know who else could do that because, you know, it's Trump. What is it? Obama's economy. Well, Trump finally found what Obama was lacking, that magic wand that Obama talked about. It was a spine. Trump actually had a spine. And remember, Obama said, hey, them jobs ain't coming back. Who does he think he is, a magician? I mean, I guess so, the magic man. P.T. Barnum, Donald Trump. I love it myself. I think it's a compliment. And so in highlighting what he sees as Trump, talking about Obama, as Trump's obvious failures, Obama also illuminated a less obvious Trump success. The incumbent president, talking about Trump, has managed to make American politics the first arena of national life to return to something recognized as normal. What he's talking about here is that now it is 24/7 Trump again. You remember back during the campaign, you couldn't turn on any of them. They would just talk about Trump all the time. And I've told this story before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. My mom, she's 98, died last year. God rest her soul. I miss her a great deal. The last election she voted in was in 2016 because I had to help her. And past that, I didn't think she really had a clue what she was doing. She was onset dementia. But she is a lifelong Democrat, teachers union, all that. I don't know that she's ever voted for a Republican. And I asked her when in 2016, I said, Mom, who do you want to vote for? And she thought a minute and she said, Trump. And I was like, whoa, because I didn't try to influence her a bit. And I said, Mom, are you sure? And you know, he's a Republican. And she said, yeah, I want to vote for Trump. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, because it's the only name I've ever heard in the last 6 months was Trump, Trump, Trump. So there you go. Be careful what they wish for. But you remember that term, yearning to be free? They talk about the Statue of Liberty to give us a huddle of masses, but they never really talk about the yearning to be free. The reason why people are supporting Donald Trump through thick and thin is there are some of us out here who still yearn to be free and know what that actually means and the price that is paid. To yearn for something is a big deal. What do the Democrats yearn for? More people coming here illegally? I don't know, more free stuff. But listen to this author in this next paragraph. If you want to know what the left thinks about you MAGA hat dregs of society, you Trump supporters, this paragraph kind of describes it. This is what the author said. Mr. Harris, he said, but political culture has returned to something close to its pre-pandemic state. People are filled with resentment and malice toward their fellow citizens. He's talking about you Trump people. Apparently he's never been to a Trump rally because it's a love fest. I hope we get back to him. They are arguing over eccentric and ethereal controversies. In other words, they're just arguing to be arguing. They're sanctimoniously, he's talking about you're sanctimoniously and often hypocritical, denouncing the sanctimoniousness and hypocrisy of their opponents. So basically, when we call them, they're all sheep out there, and they're just lining up. They're saying we're being sanctimonious. Maybe we're just being factual. Maybe we're yearning to be free, and we don't understand. You know, you don't understand Trump supporters. Trust me, we don't understand you, although I do. Here's the thing about progressives, a couple of things. One, you can't deal with them. You can't negotiate with them. You can only defeat them at the ballot box. That's it. And the other thing is they never, ever give up. They keep coming at you. They take everything to extreme. That's exactly what they're doing in this pandemic. Think about it. In abortion, for instance, they went for it being supposedly safe, legal, and rare to let's make the baby comfortable before we cut his head off, basically. I mean, they will go as far as they possibly can. But it goes on here. It says, above all, many influential voices across the ideological spectrum are united in the assumption that the most important subject, constant and all-consuming to be thinking and talking about is Trump. Trump 24/7. And he's right about that. But here's the thing that they don't understand. People willing to fight for freedom, if you're willing to stand up and fight for freedom, and these people who are protesting, I'm not condoning everything, but these pastors that are standing up out there in California, they may be the minority, but they're in dadgum good company. Because I'm